Hi, this is Daniel, and today we are reviewing the MSC World Europa. Let's start out with labels. So they're pretty much non-existent, right? The buffet has little signs on it, which will say chicken breast or lasagna, but it never lists any of the ingredients or the allergens, such as dairy allergies or anything else. When it comes to the full service dining, the menus also do not have ingredients listed and no labels are provided. Would be very nice to see that stuff right on the menu. However, the first time you go in, talk with the host station and inform them that you have a dairy allergy. That's what I did. I went right in, I introduced myself. Hi, how are you? You have to give your cruise card and you say that you have a dairy allergy. The head waiter usually will come over, they'll introduce themselves, and they will be more than happy to want to help you. That's what they did for me. You can either scan the menus on your phone, or you can ask them to bring over a paper copy if you so choose. So this head waiter basically came over, they brought the paper menu, and they went over it kind of piece by piece with me. And they said, this is what we can do, this is what we cannot do. When I had some questions about if this could be made dairy-free or if it couldn't, they said that they would have to go back and confirm with the kitchen. They did not seem irritated in any way. They seemed helpful. They wanted to help me. This went pretty seamless for the cruise. So because we were in the same dining room every single night, this head waiter got to know me and took the time to help me, was already planning ahead the next day. So sometimes they would even have me look at the menu. Hey, take a look at this. And so they could kind of get rolling on things. I would say that that was really, really helpful for that. And I'm so happy that that worked out well. The buffet is more like a wild card. You have to go by and ask someone if something has dairy in it, and they will have to go then and ask somebody else. They'll have to check with the supervisor, and then they'll have to go in the kitchen and kind of confirm, right? And let's be honest, there are some things that I'm not going to bother people about, like French fries is a good example, right? When it comes to French fries, unless, of course, I can see them sprinkled with cheese, right? You know, some places like to do rosemary Parmesan fries. That's pretty rare. It doesn't happen a lot. Usually French fries are pretty safe and they don't have milk on them. I wouldn't bother somebody to ask about French fries. But something that, you know, and by the way, when it comes to friolators and stuff like that, I don't mind and I don't have a problem having French fries that come out of a fryer if other things have been in there that have some kind of milk or cheese on them. Usually doesn't bother me for the most part, if I could knock on my wood here. You know, but that slight cross-contamination is usually not my issue. Some people it may be, but for me it's usually not a huge concern. However, fried fish is always a concern because so many places nowadays use a batter when they batter fried fish, and it can include milk powder. I don't know why you need to have milk powder when you do fried fish, but places do. And so it's always helpful that you ask, hey, what's the ingredients of this fried fish? And most importantly, on the buffet here on the World Europa, you have to ask them every single time you see it because they could make it a different way on a different day. So even if you had the fried fish one day and they said, today it's fine, the next day they could change the recipe. So never just think that, oh, I had this yesterday, totally fine. Because again, they're not listing ingredients out there for you and they could change that up and it could be a total different thing. So make sure that you check up on that and find out if it's changed. So for labels, we're gonna do a 4 out of 10 here. So when it comes to amenities, cruise ships have so many amenities that it's hard to cover all of them. So I'm gonna do my best to cover what I can, right? Let's start with the theater. So this was the first time I had cruised on the MSC World Europa. Me and my family literally show up at the theater to see one of the evening shows. And we are asked on our way in to see the reservations on our phone. And I'm going to be honest and say we didn't have any reservations on our phone, right? Because I didn't know anything about that, and I didn't know that I had to make any. I have cruised on MSC over 3 times in the past already, and there was never a time when I had to make reservations. I just literally would show up at the theater, go in, see the show, and that was it, right? The big difference between the World Europa and other previous MSC cruise ships is that you actually have to pre-reserve to see to get tickets to see theater shows. We did not know this, and so unfortunately we were turned away from the show the first night that we showed up. In fact, the staff was even a bit rude about it at first. It was a comedian that my aunt and uncle really wanted to see, and they were really excited about it. We, heard about it on the program, and they were pretty sad that we had to miss it. But we just had no idea that we had to pre-book the theater show. So once we got there, and there was all 9 of us. There's 9 of us, by the way, in this family, trip. We asked to speak to one of the supervisors because we just really wanted to see the show. They really wanted to see the show, and we had no idea that we had to make these reservations. And we were just, not so much as trying to complain, but we're trying to learn, like, what is the system? What do we need to do? We didn't even know how to pre-book it. Nothing about that. They, again, like I said in the beginning, some of the staff was kind of rude, but it's because they're trying to do their job at the same time. And they're kind of like, assuming that we already knew these things, but we didn't know these things. So the supervisor explained to us that the Europa is part of the world class of ships. And I guess there's like maybe one other one and maybe another one coming soon. That this class of ships is the ones that require you to make reservations for certain things on board, the theater being one of them. At least they knew that I wasn't lying, because on the other MSC cruise ships, they did say that reserving for shows is not a thing, right? I explained that it would be nice if we were told this on our first day. And they did say that it's listed on the program. And that's why they were like, oh, you didn't read the program, and kind of like trying to make us feel bad about it. So when I went back to my room and I did read the program in better detail, there is the smallest of small little asterisks right next to one of the shows. And if you then go forward to 2 pages, on the very back, on the very bottom of the sheet, it does say reservations recommended. And I'm so sorry, I missed that. I did not see it the first time I looked at the program. I felt bad, right? And it was obviously a learning curve for me. So after we learned what you got to do, you have to actually go to a kiosk that is near the theater, or other ones on the ship that you can find. They're on the wall. You just search for shows, right? And then you have to scan your room card and you make a reservation for the show for the night, for the next night. You can't do it for the whole cruise. You can only do it for one night ahead. And each stateroom has to book separately for the show. So if you actually have a party like we did, 9 people, we were in 3 different staterooms. You actually have to have someone's card from each of those rooms in order to make a reservation for the show. So we couldn't just I couldn't reserve, even though there's 2 people in my cabin, for the, 7 other people. I can't do that. I have to have one person's card from each of the other rooms in order to do that. So after all of that, reserving, getting into the theater, how was the theater? It was okay. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't like wow either, right? If I was to say more, and because I do love theater, I love live show, it would just be that some of the singing, the performing, it just didn't blow anybody away. Like I said, it was good. The theater seats are nice and comfy because it's a brand new ship, right? Kind of like 6 months old kind of thing. There's not really a bad seat in the theater when you come in. So even if you show up and the theater's almost full, right? You don't get a bad seat. However, that being said, some of my fellow passengers, and I don't know if you've seen this on other ships as well, right? But people don't move into the rows. So instead, when they come in, they'll sit like right by the aisle. So if there's like 3 or 4 people, they sit right at the aisle. So now when you come in, let's say the show is starting at 7:30, right? You have to then come in, and let's say that you happen to come in at 7:27. Because I mean, you don't really have to sit there a half hour before the show, right? But some people do. So they want to get better seats. And again, I don't think there's really a bad seat in there. But so if you come in 7:27, you now have to say, excuse me. And then if it's kind of like 7:29-ish, you know, you just, it's starting to cause a commotion. So it would be nice if some of the staff was to try and just, you know, promote people to move into the rows. It would just kind of help. And I understand, please don't get me wrong, some people who have accessibility issues, who don't want to be in the middle of the row because they need it to be easier to get out. I totally get that. But I don't think this was the case with most people. I think that they just stayed by the aisle so that possibly they could get out faster maybe when the show comes to an end. That's just my guess. But it causes difficulties when, you know, not everybody shows up a half hour before, and some folks will show up at 5 minutes before or even right at the showtime, and then you can't get in because there's literally all this dead space in the middle of the theater with all these really great seats, but everybody's at the aisles and they're kind of blocking the entry. So it gets a kind of like a bit cumbersome to, you know, kind of maneuver. But anyways, that was the theater, and we learned that, and hopefully you learned that. First night you get on, make your reservations, and all will be good, right? Next amenity I would talk about would be the spa. Being part of the Aria class, we had access that was included in our package to the thermal spa. So massages cost extra, but the spa area itself is, you know, the thermal, the baths, and the hot and cold, all that stuff. It's all included, and it was really beautiful. It was nice that it was not too busy. However, why is it not too busy? Because again, you need to make reservations to use the spa. You cannot just simply walk up and say, I'd like to go in the thermal area, even if there is space available, which I don't know if there was on the first day, but you have to book ahead, a day ahead. So if you show up, say, hey, I just want to go in, the first option they'll give you is for the next day. So just imagine you get on the ship, you're thinking, making my plans, I'm going to go down, I'm going to relax, go in the spa, just kind of chill out. You know, it's just not something you walk up to. Again, like, it's just different because other MSC ships that I've been on, you kind of just go walk right in and poof, you go right on. But this one was just a little bit different. You have to book for the next day. And they actually would take reservations for the entire cruise. So if you wanted to book for each day out, you could do that for each day, which was nice, and I appreciated that. But it's just something you need to learn first time you get on the ship because it is different from other ships that I've been on. So make a reservation, use the spa if you're going to plan on it. As part of the Aria package, you do again get complimentary access to the thermal area, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I thought was great. I did have family that also had a massage, which I said is an extra charge for, and they did love that. So when we discuss some other amenities, there's some other really cool stuff on this ship that they basically have this slide. I'm trying to remember back. I think the Venom Drop is the name of it. However, every day but I think one day, the Venom Drop slide was closed. And when we went to use it on the one day that it was open, you can imagine there was just so many people in line that the line was so long that we ended up giving up and not even trying to go on the slide. There's also all kinds of really other cool stuff. They were supposed to have bumper cars. This was a basketball. Every time we went to use these amenities, they were either closed or they were already booked up. So, which is kind of sad. You know, and again, sometimes maybe people had rented it out or they were doing other things, you know, with the space. There's a casino also as an amenity, very small, and I did find it actually extremely kind of closed in and just very, very smoky. For some reason, the ventilation and where it was on the ship or whatever didn't bring out the smoke as easily as we'd hoped that it would. And sadly, there was just no luck for me and my family. So the machines were quite tight. So aside from the buffet, there's also another grab-and-go pizza and fries station down, I think it's on deck 5, I want to say, 5 or 6, in front of the arcade area. And this was open late every night till about 1 a.m. For me, I was able to have some French fries. My family was able to have some pizza, but I could not eat the pizza since there were no dairy-free options. I did ask one night if, I think it was the second night, if they ever made pizza without cheese or if they could do like a pie without cheese, and they just laughed at me. So I guess everybody wanted cheese pizza on here, so fries it was. For amenities, we're going to do 4 out of 10. For cleanliness, my stateroom was very, very clean. However, I do have to say there was a hair on the shower and on the toilet upon first inspection, and they were not mine. The size and color could tell me that they were not mine. I don't know if you can tell, but I've been trying to grow out a little bit, if you haven't noticed. I've actually never had hair this long before, and I don't know how long I'm going to keep it. We'll have to see how it goes. But I could just tell that the hairs were not mine. So, but again, aside from those couple of hairs, the room was extremely clean every time. There was also no hand soap and no tissues stocked in the bathroom in my stateroom when I arrived. But I did ask my cabin attendant, and they were pretty great at replenishing those. Literally, like, I asked them right before I went to dinner, and then I came back and they were there, and it was fine for the rest of the trip. Let me also say that if you haven't seen this yet, another video, I'm gonna, you know how some people point, I'll try to point, but I don't know if it's pointing right, but I'm gonna put a link to the video. I got very sick on this cruise ship, and it was like a foodborne illness. It was just really, really terrible. I felt awful. The cabin attendant, though, was so helpful at cleaning up my room. I did make quite a mess, vomiting and getting sick on the ship. So he was very helpful at doing that for me and bringing me fresh towels as needed and just helping to keep things clean. So that was really, really appreciated. I will also say that every other part of the ship that I saw, including the buffet, the restaurant, all of the hallways, even the hospital on board, as I told you, I visited the hospital for a time, or the clinic, medical area, whatever they call it. Even though I was foggy, kind of loopy, I do remember that area was also very clean and organized. However, not really a cleanliness issue, but I would say that the entire ship was very warm. Now, this is weird when I say this because I'm used to cruising in the Caribbean, right? And obviously, like, the Caribbean, you know, for the most part, I think most of the year is always pretty warm, right? But so when you get inside the ship, they always have like the AC running, and it's like, you know, 68 to 70, whatever. But this was my first time on a cruise in the Mediterranean, and it was in January. So, of course, I'm not quite sure what the temperature should be in the cruise ship in the Mediterranean, you know, in January. But granted, outside in the Mediterranean, you know, we're, you know, sailing along in the boat, it was chilly. If you go outside, it was probably like in the 50s at night, I'm guessing, 50, 55, with wind, and, you know, because you didn't want to be outside too long because it was a little nippy. Therefore, I could see the heat being on the ship in a bunch of places, but it was a bit toasty. So if we were to say that, you know, comfort range for most of us is like 68 to 72, I would say that many parts of the ship probably would average 75 to 80, depending on where you were at certain parts. Like the dining room, for some reason, I mean, I know there's food and people moving around and stuff, but and again, the casino, like I said, just where the casino was terrible ventilation. So we'll do 8 out of 10 here for cleanliness. So for flavor, I was extremely impressed with the flavor of the foods, right? In the general dining room, all of the food every night was extremely, extremely tasty. Probably one of the best I found on a cruise ship yet. From great potatoes, really succulent meats, to fish, even really good dairy-free desserts. right? The buffet foods, or at least the ones that I tried on the buffet, they were good too. And I can even speak for the rest of the people in my family group that they were all, on average, extremely satisfied with the flavor of the food. When it did come to the breakfast, the bacon on the buffet was always a bit undercooked and too flabby, I would say. But we'll have to do 8 out of 10 here for flavor. The flavor was just awesome. Let's move on to attitude, right? This is where it gets a bit interesting. And what do I mean by interesting? Let me start out by saying that, as I told you, this was the first time I had cruised on the Mediterranean with MSC. And why am I saying that? I'm saying that because cruising on the Mediterranean is just turned out to be very different than cruising in the Caribbean, right? And of course, how so? So when you cruise in the Caribbean, right, the ship leaves from Florida, typically. I mean, that's where I got them the 4 times that I've gone, 3 or 4 times. And then there's an itinerary where you either go to, like, you know, Private Island, you go to Bahamas, you might get to go to the Mexican Riviera, whatever it is. Then you come back to Florida. So you leave usually, like, you know, 3 days, 5 days, 7 days. If you're lucky, maybe like a 12-day cruise. That'd be nice, right? I've never been on one longer than 7 days. I don't know. I'm looking forward to one someday, but so if you're on the Mediterranean, even though we boarded in Civitavecchia, I hope I said that right, the port that they use for Rome, Civitavecchia in Italy, every day at every other port, so everywhere else that we stopped along the way, there are passengers disembarking and embarking, like literally people getting off and getting on with their luggage, right? So it was like a funky way because we didn't have the same passengers for the entire cruise. So it answers my question from the first day when I got on, because I was wondering, why are we not having like a sail away party, right? On every cruise ship that I go on, there's always been a sail away party. You know, literally you go up on the top deck and it's like 6 o'clock and woo, the horn goes, right? The noise is going, we're dancing, having us a good time, right? And this did not happen here. So it made sense to me a few days later because I heard everybody coming and going, and I'd see everyone redoing safety drills every single day. They would be calling the safety drills again. I'm like, this is weird, right? We did that, you know, usually there's like a few stragglers that missed it, but it was every day. So this ship was more of a transient cruise ship where people would get off and on at every single port of call at every single day. So why do I start to mention this when it comes to attitudes and when I talk about attitudes? It's because the first reason would be that MSC cruises, they don't come with, you know, standard drink packages like some other cruise ships. So when you come on board, if you've purchased a normal fare, right? When I say a normal fare, I mean just, you know, basically a normal stateroom. You don't have an upgraded package and you're not in the yacht club, right? Your fare would include usually some coffee, some tea, some juices, and bottled water only while you're in the dining room. You don't get bottled water while you're in the buffet. So if you wish to have any soft drinks or alcoholic beverages, specialty coffees, or bottled water while you're in the buffet, you have to pay for every single beverage. So because that can be costly and expensive, therefore MSC employees will go around and they'll try to sell you a drink package, right, to have and to use for the time of your cruise. Now, when I've done this, you know, when I've seen this on Caribbean cruises, I get used to it in the first night because they usually walk around with their little, you know, iPads and they're trying to sell all this, you know, drink packages to everybody. Makes sense, and I'm used to that, right? They ask everybody who'd like to buy a drink package, and but it gets over that first night, right? It's like come and gone. However, on this cruise, as like I told you, it was like a transient cruise. People were literally stopping, you know, ending their cruise on one day, and then people starting a cruise on the same days, like every day throughout the entire 7 days that we were on board. It made it prudent for the workers to go around every single day and keep trying to sell these drink packages. can already probably imagine where this is going, right? So it caused a lot of confusion and often frustration for some of the passengers, especially in my family. I had some family members with me that didn't speak very good English, and employees would come up to them every single day and they'd keep saying, what do they need? Like, what are they talking about? Like, it was about the drink package, and if it was like the fourth day that I've been on the cruise and I had to tell people for 3 days that I don't want to, buy the drink package, and after like the fourth day, they're just starting to make unfriendly faces at you. And, I don't know if it was like this guilt thing, like the longer you're there, maybe you're going to just subject yourself to it and start buying it. But we wish we kind of had like little t-shirts or like pins or, I don't know, something that you could put on saying, I don't want the drink package, please, nicely ask somebody else, right? Not leave me alone, but like I don't want the drink package, right? But they were asking for like 7 days in a row, and I can imagine that's real stressful for the employees too, because I don't think they want to keep bothering people. But also going back to the learning curves that I mentioned about the theater and the spa and needing reservations to access amenities on the ship, even like the bumper cars, basketball, all that stuff. For the first time, Mediterranean cruisers on the first time, like myself, my family, when not knowing these things, oftentimes our ignorance would lead us to ask questions to staff, and while we're trying to question them, they're also trying to do their normal business operations. Like if it's before the theater, we're trying to ask them, hey, well, how does this work? And we're so confused, what can we do? But they're trying to help people into the theater, and they can obviously become overwhelmed, but they did not have the correct amount of patience or love that they should have had to answer such questions. They would just assume that we should know all these things already, and that if we were saying that we didn't, they would often take us as liars and could be quite rude about it, which was kind of sad. Now, for our dining room staff, they were beyond amazing. And if they were the only staff that we had to encounter on the whole trip, but of course that's not possible, right? Because there's like 1,000 workers on this cruise ship. But if in fact the dining room staff was the only staff that we had to deal with, then it'd be a perfect score here, without a doubt, because they were just so friendly, so full of smiles. They would consistently go out of their way to help us. They remembered our group. They did their best to give us our same table every night, even though it was not guaranteed, right? On 3 nights, I would say, 3 nights, they even lined up in front of the dining room and clapped and danced as we were like coming in, They were the coolest thing. I mean, it makes me just reminisce back to how much fun that they actually were. And they were so genuinely happy and passionate to see us. It was just, it felt incredible. We even took a group photo with them on the last night, and 2 of them, they even cried. They said goodbye to us. They said that we felt like family to them, and they were saying goodbye to family. And we kind of felt the same way too, right? Because we had this huge table, and we were kind of loud, and we were always explaining about what we did through the day, and like the port of call we went to, and they loved to hear our stories. We asked them about their stories, about where they were from, and what their homeland was like, and they would share just some really, really cool stuff. But they had such a positive attitude that was incredible. Thank you for that. My cabin attendant was also extremely nice, extremely friendly, and really helpful when I got sick too. On day 2, I had purchased a Wi-Fi plan, and it did not operate the way that it should. It just wasn't working right on my phone. It wasn't functioning. I don't know if other people were having issues, but there was a long line of people who were actually trying to get help. But they tried diagnosing it. They went through all the technical stuff, and they just ended up saying that, sadly, they just offered me a refund. instead. But they wanted me to go down to the services desk just to make sure that the refund was reflective on my bill. And I just sadly, my interaction with the folks at the service desk was not very friendly. And they lacked a positive attitude, which was kind of sad. So again, if it was just my dining room peeps, wow, amazing, right? But for all of it all together, we're gonna grade here 14 out of 20. Let's get down to cost, right? When it comes to pricing, we did not get the cabin that we actually paid for. So we had actually booked a deluxe Aria suite with a promenade and ocean view, they called it. So deluxe Aria suite with promenade and ocean view. I went, and it's clearly listed on their website. It's supposed to have comfortable king bed with a sitting area with like a double sofa, right? Or basically like kind of like a separate kind of living space of a living room, right? It's supposed to measure about 215 square feet. What we actually ended up getting was a deluxe balcony that only measured about 172 square feet. So basically what was missing from my room was the couch. There was no couch in my room. I didn't know the specifications perfectly until after I got home. I know I should have done my research a little bit better, right? And I'm sorry about that. This was a learning mistake. I'll do better in the future. But I just booked a room, and then when I actually went back and actually tried to make my video and look at the actual kind of room that I had and all the specifications to it, right? I said, gee, this is, and by the way, that's another video. I don't know if you can see it. I'm pointing, right? I did a whole room tour. This is not exactly the room that we had. So I actually contacted MSC twice, and I already tried to find out about the specifications of the room and that I did not get what I paid for in the room. But they still have not responded. So I'm not sure where that mistake was, but I know what I booked, I know what I paid for, and I know what the actual room is, because you can even see it in that video there. For the actual cost of the cruise, I think the value is great in terms of what you get, right? However, sometimes I can be a frugal cruiser, as seen by other people, right? I typically don't buy the drink package, only because I'm not the biggest drinker. I might have one or two a day, and so I don't get the value of the drink package. Most times I don't buy the Wi-Fi package because I honestly like to disconnect. I use my GoPro, I walk around with the GoPro, and I'll just take pictures and stuff on my phone, and I'll check stuff when I get, on port, when we're doing, when we stop somewhere at a port of call. But, I like to obviously, try one specialty dining maybe on the cruise. I don't do one every night like some other people do, but because that can kind of add up a lot significantly to your bill, because it's not included, right? Specialty dining is all an additional cost. So, and of course, let's not forget to mention that casino spending could also become a problem. I mentioned the casino was especially tight. It just didn't pay very well at all. So you could easily keep trying and think, oh, gee, I'm going to win something, right? Let me keep spending more money here. And I mean, it could become very expensive very quickly. So just be careful with that, with the, casino spending. Be careful with, drink packages, dining, specialty dining, all kinds of those extra add-ons. But your general big price, obviously, I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. When it comes to timeliness, I am going to talk about basically how fast I was able to get served my food in the dining room. And let me tell you, it was fast, right? There was never a long wait to get service. We were able to come right in, get seated. And again, like I said, when I talked about attitude, the people were just amazing. The wait staff was incredible. The buffet, however, was a bit weird sometimes. You'd show up and they had like a barricade up. They wouldn't let you in. So, and there was no rhyme or reason. I'm not sure how they counted or the timing or whatever it was, but they would let like all these people kind of pile up by the elevator area. and then they would let everybody just run in and run rampant into the buffet, and you'd wait in line. And I don't know if that was the best thing. It's kind of weird, and sometimes people would get a little bit frustrated with that. Also, we had the issues with not being able to access the theater and the spa because we didn't know about the rules and the regulations, having to wait till the next day. Obviously, that's an issue for timeliness. And the next day was actually not the show we wanted to see, but because the show that we wanted to see was actually yesterday and we missed it completely. So we weren't even able to make it up. So I'm gonna do 7 out of 10 for timeliness here. Because again, there were some things, like I said, I got food very fast, and some things I was very happy with, but there were some struggles. If we move on to options, I was very, very happy with the main dining options, right? My head waiter was able to get a lot of items on the menu made dairy-free, and especially on this cruise, I was really well taken care of. I have to give a big shout out to the chefs and to my wait staff for having not one, right, but several dairy-free dessert options on almost every night of this cruise. Can you imagine how incredible that gets a clap, right? Most cruises, desserts, I'll be honest with you, are typically fruit or sorbet, right? That's usually the only thing that I will get served. And they're just boring and sad options, right? Don't get me wrong, there was one night when I got on that I did have fruit and sorbet. But every other night of the cruise, there were several delicious dairy-free options, with the exception of the one night that I was sick that I didn't even eat, right? But they were just amazing. Sadly, for milk options, when you have coffee, I love coffee, we know that, right? I'm a coffee freak. When you have coffee in the buffet or in the main dining room, there is no milk substitutes. In the specialty coffee restaurant, there was 3 milk alternatives, which was really super. But again, this only comes with an added additional cost. So for options, also when it comes to late night eating, again, there was the pizzeria. Remember, there was open late, but they didn't serve any dairy-free pizza, and all I could eat was French fries. So for that, we're gonna do 8 out of 10. So when it comes to reception, as I mentioned earlier, this was quite a different cruise in the fact that people were coming and going every single day, right? There was no sail away party, and there was no huge greeting when we came on board. Like I said, I found it a bit weird because I was saying to myself, gee, I'm not feeling like, wow, where is everybody? Like, they're not greeting us, there's no party. But then after like the second day, third day, when I was learning about how everybody is kind of coming and going every day, I started to understand why that was. And however, I mean, it still made me sad because reception and greeting onto the ship was clearly lacking. So if you're gonna have people coming and going every day, there should still be this feeling of welcomeness that was lacking for me. Not being welcomed in the theater or the spa the first times we showed up, not understanding. Again, the reservation system was also a bit sad. That being said, the reception of our dining room crew, like I said, just blew us away. The way these folks worked to make us feel welcomed and wanted, and even like we felt like we were part of their family, was just fantastic. So we got to give 8 out of 10 for reception here. And that's because of the dining room crew. Gotta put that out there. Last closing thoughts would be how rocky and bouncy the ship was. Again, this was the first time I had cruised on the Mediterranean with MSC in January. And I have to say, I'm not sure if it has anything to do with the design of the ship, but new ships are built much taller. Everyone loves them taller, bigger, right? Now, we all know this, right? And my stateroom was on deck 16, which was the very, very top at the back of the ship. so at the top and the back. The ship was incredibly rocky for more than half of the cruise. And of course, the half time that I'm talking about is the second half of the cruise, when of course was also the time when I happened to get sick. And you know, I've like never been that sick on a cruise ship. I did get a little bit of like illness one night on the Royal Caribbean, I think from some butter. But like the motion and the seasickness doesn't make me sick. But when I was sick from foodborne illness and the rockiness and the bouncing of a ship, like if you've never wanted to feel like what it feels like to be sick on a cruise ship and then put in the bounciness of these waves, it just, whew. To say it was awful is an understatement. So a beautiful, beautiful big new ship, but again, it was just very bouncy. And I'm not sure if that is, like I said, due in part to the wind, because there's also, so on the Europa, there's this huge open promenade in the back of the boat. And I don't know if just the wind kind of goes in there, and that's where my room is and stuff. So I've heard some people recommend that it's better to be on the middle of the boat, and kind of like in the middle, so not at the tallest, you know, if you don't like the bouncy kind of thing. But that's just something that I thought about. So overall, getting off and on every day was fine. The lines were not huge at ports of call because, again, you didn't have all 5,000 passengers exiting on any particular day. So you would have some people leaving, some people getting on. You'd have some people going to explore the city, you know, whichever port we had stopped at. So it was a fun cruise. I'm really, really glad that I took it. I'm kind of sad that I got sick that day, but I'm happy and grateful that I recovered and I'm here now.